HOA didn't know my pool is for military rehab. Now they're on national news. Part 1. This illegal pool helped a Marine walk again. You have 48 hours to drain your illegal pool or face a $500 daily fine. That's what she said, waving her pink clipboard like it was some kind of badge of honor. I looked past her to see Sergeant Brooks, chest deep in the water, slowly lifting his prosthetic leg like a trophy. "Ma'am," I said quietly, "that illegal pool is where this Marine learned how to walk again." She pursed her lips so tight it looked like she'd bitten into a lemon, completely unaware that by Tuesday morning she'd become the most hated woman in America. It all started with a breeze and a tray of sports drinks. I walked out to the backyard that Monday and saw 3 veterans in my pool, laughing, splashing, doing hydro workouts together. It wasn't just exercise. It was healing in motion. This pool wasn't a luxury. It was a promise, a silent one, made to my brother after he was medically discharged from Afghanistan. He didn't survive long after coming home, but his squad mates did, and they needed a place to recover. So I turned my entire backyard into a private rehab sanctuary. Hydro treadmills, resistance jets, privacy fencing, no GoFundMe, no sponsors, just duty. And then came Karen. Her real name was Lydia Cartwright, but her permanently scowling face and clipboard addiction made Karen the only name that fit. She'd just been elected HOA president, and suddenly it was like she declared martial law on our neighborhood. Trash cans had to be hidden within 18 minutes of pickup. Driveways power washed every 2 weeks. And apparently, pools like mine, used for therapy, were against community guidelines. Nobody had ever heard of that rule before. Least of all, me. Part 2. Karen, Meet the Wounded Warriors. The first time Karen approached me, I was cleaning the pool filter. Didn't even hear her stilettos clack down the sidewalk until she cleared her throat. So violently, I thought she was choking on her own entitlement. "Excuse me," she snapped, already scribbling on her clipboard. "Is this pool registered for recreational use only?" I blinked. "It's my backyard." She sniffed. "The HOA requires all pools to maintain visual consistency with the neighborhood aesthetic. Yours is unsightly." I stared at her, stunned. "You mean the ramps? The therapy bars?" She nodded. "And the military signage, it's disruptive." Disruptive? To who? Beige siding? Dead grass? I tried to stay calm. "Those ramps are for disabled veterans, ma'am. They're recovering here." She didn't even flinch. Next morning, I found a warning duct taped to my mailbox, like some kind of ransom note. "Failure to comply will result in community-wide escalation and legal review." I laughed. Honestly, it sounded like a rejected Marvel villain monologue. But Sergeant Brooks didn't laugh. He just shook his head and muttered, "She has no idea who she's messing with." Later that day, I got a knock on the door. Karen stood there, clipboard in hand, flanked by 2 HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She launched into a speech about structural uniformity and non-compliant recreational decor. I didn't argue. I just opened the back door and let her see for herself. 3 veterans were in the pool. One was using underwater resistance bands. Another was meditating, eyes closed, finally still. And the third was sobbing, gripping the rail with both hands, because it was the first time in a week he'd done it. Without help. Karen paused. For a moment, just a flicker of humanity. Then she doubled down. "I understand this is emotionally important to you," she said in a fake therapist voice. "But emotion doesn't override the HOA bylaws. You need to remove all military signage." dismantle the therapy features, and return the pool to personal recreational use only. This is not a VA facility. I lost it. You think this is about signage? I snapped. These men bled for your right to have bylaws. Her voice sharpened. Then they should use proper medical facilities, not backyard pools in residential zones. And just like that, she walked off. But I knew then. This wasn't just HOA pettiness anymore. It was war. And I had a backyard full of veterans who knew exactly how to fight one. Part 3. The clip that crushed Karen. By Wednesday morning, the whispers had started. Some neighbors were with her. But most, they were furious. Especially after Karen called city inspectors on us. 2 guys in polos showed up, clipboard in hand, trying to look serious as they took photos of my backyard, like it was a crime scene. They found nothing. No violations, no infractions, not a single rule broken. They left red-faced, probably embarrassed they were dragged into this HOA tantrum. But Karen? She didn't back down. No, she came back Thursday morning in full bureaucratic armor. 3 printed notices, 1 for unsightly backyard structures, 1 for unauthorized signage, and 1, I kid you not, for unapproved group gatherings. I nearly choked on my coffee. Group gatherings? You mean dinner with friends? If you're friends, she said coldly, are veterans recovering from IED blasts? Then yes. Something in me snapped. I pulled out my phone. Say that again, I told her. She blinked. What? Exactly what you just said. Say it again. On camera. She stuttered, tried to backpedal. Too late. The damage was done. I uploaded the clip to a private social group, just fellow vets and their families. Within hours, it had 60,000 views. By morning, the pool looked like a support rally. Veterans from 3 different states showed up, with therapy gear, swim shorts, and flags. One guy brought donuts. Another brought a golden retriever named Tank, wearing a certified therapy dog vest and a goofy grin. My driveway looked like a military reunion, and just when I thought it couldn't get crazier, a news van pulled up. Someone had tagged a national journalist. She showed up with a cameraman, live streaming interviews from my backyard. And that's when Karen made her final mistake. She stormed back in, hair sprayed like a helmet, lips tight, clipboard clutched like a sword. When she saw the cameras, she froze. Then she smiled. That fake, desperate, oh no, I'm losing smile. This isn't what it looks like, she said, voice trembling. Sergeant Brooks stepped out of the pool, water dripping from his prosthetic. He looked her dead in the eye. Then tell America, he said, what it does look like to you. Click. That freeze frame? Her face, caught between pride and panic, became the thumbnail for every major article the next day. And the headline? HOA tries to ban rehab for wounded veterans, backlash explodes. And that was just the beginning. Part 4. Karen versus the nation. By sunrise the next day, my phone was melting. Messages, missed calls, emails, over 100 new notifications before I'd even made coffee. Some were thank yous from fellow veterans. Others, outraged citizens from across the country, and tucked between them, one message from the local HOA council that simply read, "Please explain what national embarrassment means in this context." Yeah, it had gone that far. News outlets picked up the story like wildfire. The footage of Karen, her jaw clenched, trying to scold the media while veterans swam behind her, had gone viral. But it wasn't just going viral. It was inspiring people. Military spouses started posting reaction videos. Some crying, some furious, Some just saying thank you to a stranger with a pool. Therapists weighed in on the importance of aquatic rehab. Even a guy in Alabama emailed me saying, "If they shut you down, I'll build you another one myself." By noon, I had a therapy dog on my porch and a journalist in my kitchen. Then, a sleek black SUV pulled into my driveway. Out stepped a clean-cut man with a Department of Defense badge clipped to his belt. For a second, I thought I was in trouble. He walked right up, shook my hand, and said, "You have no idea how important what you're doing is." His name was Lieutenant Marcus Harland. He ran a federal program called Operation Restore, a quiet initiative that partners with civilian spaces to support injured vets when VA facilities can't keep up. Turns out, my backyard pool, it qualified. Not only that, it was one of the few private rehab spaces in the country meeting their spec. He wasn't just here to thank me. He was here to help. He asked if I'd be open to formalizing the partnership, turning the pool into an official Operation Restore site. I was stunned. A promise I'd made to my brother, a quiet sanctuary for his squad mates, had now caught the attention of the Pentagon. I said yes. Of course I said yes. But I also asked, "What happens with the HOA?" He smirked. "Let's just say they won't like it, but they won't be able to stop you either." And as if summoned by the sound of her name, Karen appeared. She marched down the street just as the sun was setting. No clipboard this time, no posse, just pure fury hidden under a layer of fake civility. "I want to talk," she said, voice tight. "Some of the neighbors think this is becoming a circus." "You mean a sanctuary?" I said. She ignored it. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. If you're willing to make some adjustments, remove the flags, limit the hours, reduce the number of people, I believe we can reach a compromise." I stared at her, amazed. "You still think this is about zoning?" "It is," she replied. "No," I said softly. "It's about humanity, and your bylaws don't override the Constitution." A veteran nearby, a double amputee floating peacefully in a support chair, gave a slow clap. Others joined in. Karen's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "Well," she hissed, "don't say I didn't try." And she turned and disappeared into the dark. Only this time, the world was watching. Part 5. The HOA's secret meeting and the final straw. Just when I thought we'd seen the worst of Karen, she took it underground. That weekend, I was getting the pool cleaned for a therapy group coming Monday morning when Marcus called. His voice was calm, but low. "You're gonna want to see this," he said. He sent me a video. A shaky, secretly recorded video from inside what appeared to be an unofficial HOA board meeting. There were 5 people in the room, Karen front and center. She wasn't even pretending to be civil anymore. In the video, she slammed a folder on the table and barked, "This veteran story has gotten out of hand. It's a PR stunt, and he's milking patriotism for attention." Someone off camera nervously agreed. She went on. "We wait for the media to forget. Then we shut it down. Quietly. And the worst part? Laughter. Actual laughter. That moment, that disgusting moment, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about property lines. This wasn't about bylaws. This was about control and ego. They didn't care about rehab. They didn't care about legality. They didn't even care about the truth. All they wanted was silence. But they'd messed with the wrong community. I sent the video to Marcus, then to every veteran group that had ever messaged me. Then, I posted it. Everywhere. TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. Reddit blew it up in less than an hour. The backlash made the first wave look like a warm-up. People were livid. Veterans from across the country stitched the video with their own rehab stories. One guy in a wheelchair made a whole thread titled, "My pool saved me too, and now I'm angry." Even a senator reposted the clip, tagging the Department of Veterans Affairs and saying, "This is exactly why we need federal protection for civilian rehab spaces. This HOA should be ashamed." By that night, protest signs started appearing across the neighborhood. One house had a banner that said, "Support the pool, support vets." Another simply painted a giant flag across their garage. Karen's house? Dark, quiet. For once, she didn't come outside. And the HOA? They were imploding. Emails leaked. Old petty fines Karen had buried were uncovered. Neighbors who'd been silent started speaking up. Turns out she'd fined someone $100 for watering their lawn with a hose that didn't match the community aesthetic. Another neighbor had been cited for having overly vibrant daffodils. No, really. The final straw? A local veteran bar renamed their pool table the Cartwright Sinkhole. And they taped her face to the 8-ball. But even as the world laughed at her, we were still waiting. Because the zoning board hearing, the real showdown, that was still coming. And the whole country would be watching. Part 6. The hearing. One pool, one promise, and a nation holding its breath. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp, but by 8:30, the entire parking lot outside the municipal building was flooded. Not with cars, but people, veterans in uniform, locals holding signs, reporters with cameras already rolling. And right in the center of it all, a little girl holding a handmade sign that read, "This pool helped my dad walk again." I stood at the edge of the crowd, heart pounding. Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You ready?" he asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Inside, the zoning board sat stiffly behind their long desk. 5 people, stone-faced, like they were about to judge a murder trial. Karen? She sat 2 rows back, clipboard in her lap, expression flat. But you could feel the panic behind her eyes. Then they called my name. I stepped up, and beside me, Marcus Harland, the DOD rep himself, cool as ever. He started with the facts. The pool's specifications, the medical certifications, the letters from therapists and surgeons, the Operation Restore partnership. Then, he played the video. Yes, that video. Karen standing before her secret board calling the veterans a PR stunt. You could hear a pin drop in the chamber. And then, he played something else, a testimony. A video clip from Sergeant Brooks, still recovering from surgery. His voice came through the speaker, low but steady. "I couldn't walk until I got in that water. I couldn't sleep until I floated again. This pool gave me peace. If helping a veteran heal is illegal, then what are we even doing?" When the clip ended, silence, tense, powerful. Then came Karen's lawyer, a polished guy with perfect hair and a portfolio full of nonsense. He talked about zoning violations, recreational residential intent, and community cohesion. He even pulled out a letter, anonymous of course, from a neighbor who said the pool made the block feel like a political campaign. I asked to speak directly, and they let me. I stood before the board and told them everything about my brother. The promise I made. The first time a veteran stood again in that water. The first time a scarred Marine laughed during therapy. And then I said, I'd rather be fined, arrested, evicted, than become the kind of neighbor who values grass height more than human healing. The room didn't cheer. It didn't need to. It shifted. You could feel the walls move with it. The board recessed to deliberate. Outside, the crowd had doubled. Signs waved, flags flew. One read, "Healing happens here. HOA equals hypocrisy." Marcus stood beside me. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then looked at me and smiled. They voted. Unanimous. You won. I blinked. I won? He nodded. Not just that. They're drafting statewide protections. Your pool's not just legal, it's a model. And right there, surrounded by strangers, reporters, and warriors, I cried. Because this wasn't about me anymore. It never really was. It was about what happens when you don't back down, when you choose people over power, promise over politics, and humanity over HOA. Part 7. From backyard to blueprint, how one pool started a national movement. The headlines faded. The cameras left. But the ripple? It kept growing. By the following week, I had calls from 6 different states, lawmakers, veteran centers, even school districts, all asking the same thing. How can we do what you did? And I didn't have a fancy answer. I wasn't a politician. I didn't have a foundation. I just had a promise and a pool. But the thing is, sometimes that's enough. Marcus called again, this time with a bold proposal. We want to use your story as the basis for new legislation. Something permanent. Something national. I sat in silence, blinking at the phone. He continued, voice steady. We're drafting the Veterans Residential Rehab Protection Act, and we want you to help write it. Me? A guy who still couldn't figure out HOA garbage day rules? But he wasn't joking, because suddenly, people were listening, and it wasn't just officials, it was veterans. A Marine with a service dog drove in from Utah just to shake my hand. A Vietnam vet sent a photo, his backyard pool now rigged with resistance bands and a homemade ramp. A Gold Star widow wrote, "You gave my husband a place to heal. You gave me a reason to believe people still care." Even the HOA board, yes, the same people who once hid behind bylaws, reached out with a new offer. They wanted to officially recognize the pool as a community rehabilitation zone. They wanted to endorse it, talk about irony. And Karen? She vanished. No newsletters, no citations, no midnight rants about aesthetic consistency. Just silence. Rumor had it she'd stepped down completely, moved to her sister's house 2 towns over. But I didn't feel like celebrating her exit, because this wasn't a story about her. Not anymore. This was a story about what happens when you stop asking for permission to be decent, when you build something and dare others to follow. That weekend, we held what we called the First Waterline Summit. Just a barbecue, some lawn chairs, and a mix of therapists, vets, neighbors, and a few state reps curious enough to show up in rolled-up sleeves and sandals. And during it, we drafted it. Line by line, clause by clause. A new law that would guarantee veterans the right to recover, anywhere they needed, even if that anywhere looked like a backyard pool. When we finished, we all stood there. No applause, no ceremony, just a quiet pause, the kind that only happens when everyone knows. Something real just happened. Part 8. Karen returns with one last trick, but the nation's watching now. Just when I thought the war was over, she came back, not with a clipboard, not with a lawyer, but with something worse, a zoning appeal. I found the letter in my mailbox, stamped, certified, and soaked in legal jargon. At the bottom, filed by Lydia Cartwright. I stared at it, and all I could do was laugh. After everything, the news stories, the viral videos, the petitions, the legislation in progress, she was still trying to win. But this time, her angle was different. According to the appeal, she claimed the pool's operation violated local water usage laws, posed a slippery hazard to children, and, wait for it, was emotionally triggering to residents with noise sensitivities. Seriously? That same morning, Marcus called. He'd already heard. "She's trying to stall the bill," he said flatly. "Delay it, drown it in red tape. Hope the media forgets." But this wasn't the same battle anymore. The world was watching now. And Karen? She was about to realize what it's like to face a nationwide neighborhood. That afternoon, we held a press conference. Right in front of the pool. Cameras, flags, veterans in uniform, reporters leaning in. And then, a voice broke through the crowd. Software. Quiet. A teenage girl stepped forward, holding her phone. "I'm sorry," she said, trembling. "I'm not a vet, but my dad was. And this pool, it's where I saw him smile for the first time since he lost his leg." She looked straight into the nearest camera. "You don't shut something like this down, Satyas, just because one person doesn't like the view." And boom. That clip hit the internet like a spark in dry grass. By sundown, it had over 1.2 million views. Hashtags lit up. Shade over shame. Jah veterans. Before. Rules. Karen can't stop healing. Even a few politicians shared it with the caption, "Time to protect what matters." Karen's appeal, it collapsed in less than 48 hours. The city rejected it unanimously. And not only that, they sent her a warning. Any further nuisance filings meant a review of her conduct and possible legal action for harassment. She didn't file again, didn't show her face, didn't even post another HOA bulletin. She was done. Not because she gave up, but because the entire country finally told her, no. You don't get to crush kindness with technicalities. You don't get to bury recovery under a rule book. You don't get to shame people for healing out loud. Part 9. The pool that changed the law and everything after. I never set out to change anything. I just wanted to keep a promise. But that promise, one backyard, one redemptive patch of water, had just turned into a national movement. 3 weeks after Lydia's final appeal got crushed, something surreal happened. The governor called. Not his assistant, not a staffer. The governor. He wanted to meet in person. When I arrived at the State House, they brought me to a conference room lined with veterans, state legislators, even a few Department of Defense officials. And at the center of the table, a draft. The Veterans Residential Rehab Protection Act. The bill we helped build. I ran my fingers across the cover, stunned. It was real. Not just a proposal, not just words. A formal, state-backed protection for private properties used in therapeutic, non-commercial rehab for U.S. veterans. Immune from HOA interference. All thanks to a red umbrella and a backyard pool, the governor said, grinning. I laughed and teared up at the same time. That's when he asked, "Would you do the honor of introducing it publicly?" I blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "You're the one who lived it, the one who built it. Who better to lead it?" I stepped up to that podium with trembling hands, looked out across a sea of cameras, and said the only thing that felt right. This isn't just about a pool. It's about protecting the people who protected us, even when the enemy wears khakis and holds a clipboard. The room broke into applause. A week later, the bill passed. Unanimously. And not just that. Other states began calling. 3 more introduced their own versions of the act. 1 senator pitched it at the federal level. And our pool? It became the first official residential partner site for Operation Restore. But the best part was what happened right here, in the neighborhood. Because when the news vans left and the headlines faded, we kept going. The pool stayed open. The veterans kept coming. And slowly, other neighbors joined. Mr. Alvarez built a wheelchair ramp to his garden. The Petersons started hosting Vet Plus Kids story hours on Saturdays. And HOA, they elected a brand new board. This time, It wasn't about perfection, it was about people. And as for Lydia, she sold her house, quietly. No banners, no press, just gone. Some say she moved to a lakeside town 3 hours north. Others say she joined a meditation retreat to reset her vibration. Me? I don't wish her harm. She was the storm. But storms pass, and they make room for growth. Now, every time I sit at the edge of the pool, every time I see a veteran laugh or float or walk a little easier, I think of my brother. I think of the promise. And I realize we didn't just win. We built something that lasts. Part 10. 1 year later, and the pool still heals. It's been 1 year. 1 whole year since a clipboard and a complaint tried to drown what we built. And now, as I sit on this bench by the water, sunlight flickering across the surface, I realize something. This pool didn't just survive, it transformed us. There's a new sign on the gate now. It doesn't say private property or no trespassing. It says, welcome home. Because that's what it became, a home. Not just for the veterans who come to stretch old wounds in warm water, but for kids who splash beside them, for neighbors who drop off meals, for strangers who become friends. Last weekend, we held our first annual Shade and Service BBQ. Veterans grilled, neighbors danced. One little girl read a poem she wrote about the brave pool that helped her daddy walk again. I couldn't speak for a moment after that. Just stared at the umbrella, still spinning slowly in the breeze, still red, still proud, still undefeated. And across the yard, a new addition, a bronze plaque, set in stone near the shallow end. It reads, "In memory of those who served, and in honor of the neighbors who stood with them." I didn't write that. The community did. They all pitched in. Even the HOA. Yep, even them. The new board president, Marie, showed up last month with fresh flowers and said the words I never thought I'd hear. We were wrong, and we're proud of you. And that's when it hit me. Not every fight is about winning. Some are about remembering. Remembering who we are, why we stand, and what we're willing to protect, even if it starts with nothing more than a red umbrella and a promise made by a grieving brother. So, if you're ever facing your own HOA storm, if someone tries to silence what matters, clip your wings with rules, or drown you in technicalities, just remember, shade speaks louder than words, and healing, it doesn't need permission, it just needs a place to begin. Epilogue. The ripple that keeps going. Sometimes, the biggest changes don't come with fanfare, they come with ripples, software, steady, relentless. Since the day a clipboard tried to shut us down, that ripple has reached farther than I ever imagined. 4 more neighborhoods have started their own backyard recovery programs. 3 states are now debating similar protections for veteran rehab spaces. And just last week, I got a letter from a soldier stationed overseas. It said, "I don't know your name, but I saw your pool." And it reminded me, there's still good waiting back home. I folded it carefully, tucked it into the shadow box by the door, and stepped outside. The pool was still. The wind gently spun the old red umbrella. Still proud, still undefeated. Veterans chatted quietly nearby. A child laughed in the shallow end. And for a moment, all was calm. I didn't build this for fame. I built it for a promise. But somewhere along the way, that promise grew legs. Now it walks. In every backyard that dares to choose healing over HOA noise, people over policy, and shade over shame. Because in the end, healing doesn't need permission. It just needs a place to begin. And sometimes, that place is home.